You'll hear the phrase, vaporwave is dead, tossed around a lot in internet music circles, usually accompanied by horrifically ugly graphics featuring busts, neon lights, and palm trees. But no matter how many times it's said, anyone who's actually tapped into the scene knows that people have been saying this for years now, and it's also never been true. With this video, I want to show that vaporwave is still very much alive, and that it's actually blooming at the moment, with a short case study about one particular artist. There are so many vapor subgenres, from echo jams to slushwave to mallsoft, and it seems like new ones are getting invented, or at least coined, all the time. Like, what the hell is vapor noise? Out of the myriad genres of vaporwave, however, one has always stuck with me the most, that being this little genre known as Signalwave. Signalwave, also known as broken transmission, has been a favorite genre of mine for a while now. For those unfamiliar with Signalwave, the music website Rate Your Music defines it as the following. Broken transmission is a subgenre of vaporwave characterized by the use of short sound bites to create new songs and soundscapes. The aim of the genre is to simulate the experience of channel hopping and radio station switching. The music consists of the manipulation of samples taken from TV broadcasts, advertisements, film, radio broadcast recordings, and other sources. Samples chosen are often purposely lo-fi in nature, with a fuzzy and grainy sound. Like vaporwave, samples are looped, slowed down, sped up, and toyed with using other sound collage techniques to create a new emotion or atmosphere. The resulting tracks are often 1 to 2 minutes in length. Here's some albums you might have seen around that commonly get assigned this label. Personally, I was first introduced to the Signalwave scene via Infinity Frequency's Computer Trilogy, released from 2013 to 2014. 3 albums of fuzzy and fleeting loops that disappear before you can get a good grasp of them. I was captivated by the beauty yet ephemerality of the music. I loved what I was hearing, but also became obsessed with the idea of music that faded away, that evaporated, right before your very ears. Most of these tracks didn't even break 2 minutes in length, but the entire project would stick in my mind for the following weeks, months, and then years. Signalwave is still around, and in a big way, just largely on Bandcamp. If you dig even a little below the surface, you'll find countless great albums, such as projects like Branches by Sarah Shio, Channel Tuning by Intended Decay, and 1450 kHz of Broken Grove by TV2, just to name a few. Through all these countless albums, artists, and aliases, however, one musician, to me, sticks out the most, with that artist being Victory Over Death. Like with many vaporwave artists, I don't know much about Victory Over Death as a person. They released 2 other aliases, those being Forgetting and Renee Morrison, which could very well be their real name, but who's really to say? What I do know about VOD, however, is that they've put out a large amount of music in a very short time, with their first album released in June of 2023, and a whopping total of 42 albums on their main Bandcamp page alone now. That's a rate of about 15 albums a year, which is prolific even by Signalwave standards. You might assume that they are just pumping out copy and paste slop, but that couldn't be further from the truth. While there is a core VOD sound, there's a lot of variety here under just this alias alone. Most of their albums, however, are composed of, in typical Signalwave fashion, short, lo-fi instrumental songs that are over before you even know it. It's not necessarily groundbreaking, but it's more about the execution of the style here which is so compelling. VOD's albums, while usually being very short themselves, are actually very memorable to a large extent, with each release having its own flair and character. Some are more calming, some are more melancholic, and some exist in seemingly their own world. An example of some albums that execute this style well would be the first 2 projects in their Signal Ambient series, which are both stellar collections of small fading loops that collapse and appear with a beautifully liminal sound. These 2 albums are some of my favorites from VOD, and fit seemingly any mood I find myself in. They're great ambient albums, and their short nature makes them so easy to listen to. If you look on their Bandcamp page, however, you might notice that there's actually a 3rd album in this series, Signal Ambient 3, but this release actually changes things up quite a bit. Inspired by the longer works of William Basinski, this album was composed of 4 longer songs meant for background or sleep, being made for not-so-active listening. That's the kind of thing I'm talking about, however. While I know background music doesn't sound super exciting, it's an example of how VOD is willing to explore and create music in many different styles and avenues. Take, for example, one of my favorite VOD releases, Broadcast for Continued Recovery in the Wake of Serious Illness or Injury. This album, while being only 24 minutes long, is downright heartbreaking in terms of the music here. It reminds me a lot of the poem Tulips by Sylvia Plath, seemingly embracing the slow process of healing, of recovering, of trying to be better today than you were yesterday. There's a significant heaviness, or weight, to these short clips of fragmented music, like while composing them, VOD was going through something that had affected them deeply. It's powerful and leaves me wondering about what this artist has gone through and why they're communicating their pain in the way that they are. Another very unique album for Victory Over Death is, as of writing, their newest release entitled Code. Inspired by Darren Aronofsky's Pi and the music of Brian Leeds, the songs here are extremely dense and claustrophobic, swallowing you up in waves of buzzing sounds and noise as you try to find your bearings. It's disorientating, off-putting, and a really interesting experiment into what Signalwave can even be. That's a large reason of why I love Victory Over Death so much, the refusal to conform to the expectations of the genre they inhabit. Take, for example, their album 8 Studies for Airwave, released in February of 2025. Going against basically the concept of the whole genre, this album is actually made up of original pieces, sparse piano tracks coated with a layer of distance and fuzz. VOD describes themselves as not a seasoned piano player, but the presentation and attitude of this music is absolutely spot on. Another example of VOD working outside the box would be their April 2025 album, whose title roughly translates to Shame. Inspired by the music of Gas, CT57, and the films of Bela Tarr, this album is only 2 ambient songs, or sides, that are each about 18 minutes a pop. The music fits the title all right. It's melancholic, slow-moving, and lonely, quietly floating over you as you listen like a gray cloud. There's a deep sadness here, something that feels extremely genuine and heart-wrenching. Some sections even remind me of the ambient passages from Godspeed You Black Emperor songs, just overall really good stuff. There's so many Victory Over Death albums that even I haven't heard them all, but I love basically each one that I've heard. I think they're a super talented artist with a ton of range and willingness to experiment. Hopefully this little video has given you a window into another world of music you may or may not be familiar with, and maybe even convinced you to check some of it out. Signalwave is a super exciting genre to me, being proof that Vaporwave is still very much alive, and Victory Over Death is one of the rising stars of the genre. Honestly, they're one of my overall favorite artists of the decade so far, and I think they deserve all the attention they can get. They're definitely a musician to keep an eye on, and I can't wait to see where they go next.